Leonick, and I am the president of the League of Women Voters of Huntington. I welcome you all to the wonderful Meet Candidates Night tonight. Congratulations for making it. I'd also like to welcome our co-sponsor, the Huntington Township Chamber of Commerce. May have to go. All right. Hello? There we go. I'd also like to thank our moderator, Liz Scott, who is the president of the League of Women Voters of Suffolk, LIO. She will be conducting the forum and posing questions to the candidates. Then I'd also like to welcome our candidates. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We're one of the largest local leagues in Suffolk County. The members of the Huntington League are also members of the County League of Women Voters, the New York State, and the National League of Women Voters. For over 100 years, the League has advanced its mission to prepare our citizens to vote and be active participants in the political process. We're a nonpartisan organization, meaning that we do not ever support or oppose a particular candidate or political party. However, we are a political organization. The League has positions on issues such as election law, the judiciary, ethics, health, incarceration, and the environment. If you think that registering voters, providing balanced information on issues, inspiring our young people towards full civic participation, monitoring the public policy making process, and engaging with public officials and government entities are particularly critical today, then I encourage you to join the League of Women Voters. Many of our board members and committee leaders are here. If you are such a member of the League of Women Voters board or a committee member, please raise your hand. These are people that you can ask questions if you'd like to learn more about the League. I never forget the men. They don't let me. Now, the purpose of this forum is to help voters learn about the key issues of the campaign and to witness candidates discuss those issues face to face. All of our policies related to forums are designed to support these goals. And so let me tell you a little bit about it. The questions to the candidates are developed by the co-sponsors and will be read by the moderator. Additional questions from the audience must be written on index cards, which all of you should have received, and there should be additional supply. All questions will be reviewed to reduce redundancy and to omit queries that are personal or offensive. Campaign representatives will be asked to remove materials that are offensive as well. Why do we do this? Because we want to create a safe space for you to hear the truth about what these candidates think, and so that you can make a good decision when you vote on November the 7th. Now, if you have a question, you can hand it to one of our members who are standing around the room. You'll see them with the cards. They'll make sure that they go to our question vetters, who will be looking for those questions in regards to quality. Now, one of the things I do want to emphasize is that there should be no form of recording by any device during this forum. The content of this forum is owned by the League of Women Voters, and only the audio and video is completed by an authorized person by the League. As you can see down there, that is our League representative that is video recording this forum. Anyone else who airs this recording may do so only in its entirety. No one is permitted to edit typical footage for campaign purposes. All of the candidates have signed an agreement to abide by this policy. The League of Women Voters will post recordings of this candidate tonight in their entirety on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and if schedule allows, during our public access television channel slot. So with that, I'd like to ask Mr. Brian Edwards to join me and tell us a little bit about the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm extremely excited to be joining with the League of Women Voters in this event. We do it every year, and out of tradition, our past chair, Mr. Bob Bontempi, has led us in the pledge many times. Bob would also like to say a few words, so I'm going to introduce him as well.
Just quickly, the League and the Chamber of Commerce have had a long-standing relationship. I don't even know how many years. I've been a long-standing man, whoever said that, for the League of Women Voters for a long time. We worked hard to promote this tonight, to get all of you here. This is a generational election. It's important that if you haven't had the chance, you find a League of Women Voters person and fill out one of these cards and ask very specific questions to all these folks up here. And we ask the moderator to certainly hold them accountable, okay? Important year. So thank you, have a great night. Please participate, and thank you so much for that.
Everyone, please stand for the
Please
Pledge of
stand.
Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want to wish all the candidates luck tonight and have a great evening.
Please silence your cell phones if you have not already.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I normally, just so you understand my strange interactions with microphones, I like to make eye contact when I ask questions, and because well beyond capacity here, my podium's too far back when I do the supervisor part. So they courteously gave me this lavalier, which I figured it's easier to use as a handheld. And then I'll revert back when I do the council and the highway department. So I apologize if it cuts in and out slightly, but we'll give it our best shot. Just to reiterate a couple of things, the candidates did draw lots in terms of who will issue the first opening statement, and then followed by the people to their left for that office. And at the end, we'll do it in the same order, so the last will be the closer. So the one on the left, as you face in every particular race, will go first at the very beginning, the one on the right will go all the way at the end. My understanding is that each candidate has 1 minute for an opening statement. Then we're going to start with the actual questions. I will attempt valiantly to keep track of an alternating start and work their way around, because we don't want the same person answering first all the time. What I will do is, you should know also, if you could hold up a red card so they can see what we have here. This is, as someone said this evening, like a timeout, but it's basically one shot at a rebuttal. If you've gone already and you feel there's something, you can't wait until the end of the debate and your closing statement, you can raise that red card. You get 30 seconds to make your point. We have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of questions. One other point about the questions. What they're doing right now is sorting them by topic, because there is no way, even if we had 4 hours, that we could cover all of these questions. What we're trying to do is get questions on each of the major topics, and if there is some real difference in the questions on the topic, we'll go to a second or third question. But if we've covered a topic, and then another card comes in on that, we're not going to go back and reopen a topic unless it's something quite different. So I do apologize. I've actually had people say to me, why did you deliberately not ask my question? And I'm like, I don't know your handwriting. I have no idea what who's who is. But we are making a very level, unbiased attempt to cover all the concerns. And let me also say I am honored every year to be asked back. I haven't flubbed it too much, I think. But I enjoy it. Huntington to me is a fabulous community. I live on the Smithtown side of the line, and we have our own interesting issues in the election this year. But Huntington is a vibrant community, it's an engaged community, it's a diverse community, and I think it's such a testament to the community that so many of you are here this evening. I'm going to ask you, after each candidate gives their opening statement, if you'd like to applaud that candidate, please do so. Once they have given their opening statements, no applause, no mumbling, no catcalls, no phones either. I will stop and I'll wait. And if I have to say something, all it does is waste time. And we want to hear them. That's why the questions are important, that they're concise too. We want to get as much out of them as possible. So now that we've gotten too much out of me, I think we should start with the supervisor candidates. So again, in the order here would be Mr. Raspantini, then Ms. Edwards, then Mr. Lupinacci on the opening statements. And Coletta's our timer right here. She'll be raising the countdown. Mr. Raspantini.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Raspantini, and I'm running for Huntington Town Supervisor on the independent party line and corruption. For the first time in a long time, Huntington has a choice between the wealthy, connected few and someone who is no different from any of you. How often do we complain about the traffic, construction, lack of accountability at Town Hall, and our taxes getting higher and higher? Does the supervisor listen? Did the board listen to the thousands of people in Elwood who mobilized to fight monstrous development while raising their children and working full-time? Of course not. Where will it be next? Northport? Huntington Station? I am the only candidate who pledges to take a new, clean look at any development in the town and will only allow the gentlest form of this to occur while I'm in office. The current political machine in power today plans to have you living in a construction zone for the foreseeable future, breaking ground and unearthing toxins from polluted soil. I promise a moratorium on development as soon as I step into office. The question remains, do you want a lower quality of life at a higher cost of living? The choice is yours.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Councilwoman Tracey Edwards, and I'm very excited to be here, and I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for co-hosting this event, and all the work that you're doing on behalf of businesses, and I'm proud to be here with the League of Women Voters. I will tell you that it's safe here, since it's the League of Women Voters, for me to say how excited I am to be a female candidate running for Town Supervisor. We have 50% women in the town and in our country, and we only have about 19% in elected office. So if I am afforded the opportunity to be your town supervisor, I will be professional, I will be respectful, I will conduct myself with dignity and respect, and I can't wait to hear all of your questions and concerns. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Assemblyman Chad Lupinacci, and I'm also a candidate for Huntington Town Supervisor. I was born and raised in Huntington Station, born in Huntington Hospital, attended the South Huntington School District, where I graduated from Walden High School. Up in the Assembly, we did a lot of great things in the past 5.5 years that I've been serving up in the State Assembly. We cut middle-class taxes, the lowest they've been in 60 years. We brought back $2.5 billion for water quality and water infrastructure. We helped reform the Common Core. And we also brought back record state aid to the Long Island schools. As the next town supervisor, I'll make sure that we don't pierce the tax cap, that we cut and control taxes in the area, we bring back jobs to the area too, we help preserve our open space and our water quality, and we're not right now in EPA compliance for the past 3 years. We want to make sure that we come into compliance with EPA and DEC. And of course, we need to protect the public, especially with the heroin crisis and the gang activity. So I just want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting the Huntington Chamber of Commerce and for all of you taking your time out of your busy schedule. And I look forward to the questions this evening. Thank you.
applause, and you can re-applaud at the very, very end of the supervisor's segment. Ms. Edwards, you're going to get the first question. You're rotating. Political arguments on national issues have caused neighbor to argue with neighbor. How can you restore civility to Huntington as supervisor?
Well, I will say that I do think that we do have civility. I think that the election season is what gives us a lot of angst. But on a day-to-day basis, I will tell you that we have a great town. We have wonderful constituents. We have wonderful communities that usually always work together. As town supervisor, it's going to be my job to ensure that we're celebrating the diversity of our town, that we're talking respectfully to each other, that we're working together and talking openly about complex issues. Because the more we communicate with each other, that's what the issue is. When we stop talking and we stop listening, that's when we have the most issues. So I believe that that starts with the town supervisor, and I will be out and about, and as I have been as your council person, talking to everyone that I can about all the important issues in Huntington.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci?
I think, getting along with people, having open dialogue and communicating is key. I'm a Republican that represents a heavy Democratic district right now. And I always have an open mind, always listen to all sides of an argument, and it doesn't matter if you agree with me, disagree with me, Republican or Democrat, or have an opposing argument with me, I will always meet with people. And I think it means having open communication and knowing that we're there for one another. We all come from Huntington, we should work together, we should solve the problems together, we should put political biases behind and know that we have common goals in hand, especially at the local level. Whether it's dealing with heroin or gang initiatives, whether it's bringing back jobs to the area, whether it's making sure that we have a better quality of life. Working together and cooperating together is key. And I think over the past few years at Town Hall, we've had a lack of leadership, whether it's been in the supervisor's position or the town board members. And I think it starts with the head up and making sure that it permeates throughout our communities. And some of the things that I want to do to make sure that people have more access to town halls, extend town hall hours, and of course expand the speaking time out to our town board members. So everyone has a say and we can deeply know what the issues are in the area.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini?
Well, the first thing I'd like to mention is that I believe that we have some really great civic groups in our town. And unfortunately, I feel that a lot of these civic groups are ridden with corruption that comes directly from town hall. The biggest problem I see is that the local people are being disenfranchised from actively engaging in these communities. So what we need to do is get to the heart of the issue and figure out who needs to be removed from these civic groups to make sure that we can open up that space to all of you. So that's the first thing I'd like to do when I get in there, is to make sure that everybody is talking to one another respectfully, and that the civic groups, especially the bids, are able to operate the way that they're supposed to. And that's going to be in accordance with New York State law. And there are other issues at Town Hall that we are dealing with right now when it comes to corruption. And in case we need to remind everybody what corruption means, it's dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in power. And that's something really important to mention, because what we're dealing with right now is nepotism on our governmental level, and we need to stop that in order for people to work together better.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lupinacci, this next question will start with you. In what ways will you support the mission of the Huntington Housing Authority?
Well, I think we need to make sure that we have housing for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're starting off with a family, or you're just graduating from college, or you've entered your senior years, or if you're starting off with a young family. So if you want a single family home, or if you want to move into an apartment that's either a studio or that has multiple bedrooms, we want to make sure that housing units are there and they're close to your jobs that you get. And I think it goes twofold. Not only do you need economic opportunity in areas so that there's jobs where people can commute and where they can go, but definitely make sure that there's transportation systems in place, and also that there is housing in stock, and making sure that when people start off where they can't afford it, there's government assistance to provide for them. And I think that will help make sure that we meet those housing needs.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini, your turn.
Sure. Well, I think this question really relates to affordable housing which in my opinion, I really truly believe that a large part of that is propaganda. I don't believe that we really, if we're able to afford our taxes, have to focus so much on building so many rental communities. And that's something that we really need to take a look at. So in working with the Huntington Housing Authority, I'd like to know what sort of things they're doing to help people buy houses, own properties, and be able to build equity. Because that's the biggest challenge that the youth really faces today, is being able to own property. And that's where we really need to focus. Affordable housing is really, and I think I'm the first person, as a matter of fact, I know I am the first person to ever say this, affordable housing is a women's rights issue. And that's because women are having babies later and later in life. And that's a problem, because it's a health concern. I know that you might think it's funny, but it's actually true. As a matter of fact, I made sure to bring that here to show everybody that affordable housing is actually a women's rights issue.
Thank you very much. Ms. Edwards? Folks, we want to get as much comment from each of the candidates as possible. Make your notes, talk to the candidates later too. I'm sorry, Ms. Edwards?
Sure. Well, I think we have to support the Housing Authority in a couple of ways. We need to ensure that we are providing housing for rentals, for home ownership, for first-time home buyers as well, for seniors. But we also have to make sure that we are ensuring that it's safe housing, that we have housing that if absentee landlords are not having homes and rentals that are safe both for the neighborhood and both for the tenants itself. I put in the rental registration after being contacted by the first responders because the firefighters were saying that they were coming to homes that they thought that they were single-family homes, and they were actually going into the house and running into a wall because it had been split into multiple units. So we do have a responsibility to ensure that we are working on affordable housing, but we also have to make sure that it is safe for the tenants that are there and that it is not impacting negatively on the neighborhoods and their property values.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci? Sorry. I got ahead of myself. Mr. Raspantini, this one starts with you. Fees used to be $75 for 2 years for an accessory apartment, but now it's $500. That's a 200% increase. What are you going to do about the hundreds, maybe thousands of illegal apartments and garages that are not registered with the town and pay nothing?
Well, I think that, I know that Councilwoman Edwards did put in the bill to essentially force the landlords to have the opportunity to register these apartments. I believe that there should be an opportunity for these homeowners and these property owners to have amnesty where they are able to come forward without penalty to the town and offer their, their honest opportunity essentially to make sure that they can register their apartment. I don't think they should be penalized. I think this is an affordable housing problem. If people are going to be penalized for having their apartment, which in many ways actually probably every single apartment precedes Councilwoman Edwards' bill. So, these people are afraid to come forward, they don't want to come forward, and, who's going to pay it? The tenant will end up paying that bill. So that's a problem for affordable housing. And I think that the way that we do that is to offer the community amnesty and say, if you have an apartment, if there is an accessory apartment in your home, you can come forward and not be penalized.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards?
Yeah, I don't think that the issues are not, in my opinion, with accessory apartments, because when you have someone that is living in your home, you're going to make sure more than anybody else that the person is living safely, that they are taking care of their property values, that they are not negatively impacting the neighborhood. The issue really, in my mind, is more of an absentee landlord. There are great absentee landlords, but there are some that are not doing the right thing by the community and by their tenants. So I think that that's really where the issue is, and one of the things I'd like to do is to do more proactive code enforcement and talking to the community leaders about the things that are going on in their neighborhood. Everyone has to live. No one wants to live in an unsafe home, but I think if we work together cooperatively, we can solve this on both the benefit of the tenant, the landlord, and the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci.
Well, the increase in the fee there has gone up like a lot of fees in the town of Huntington. When there's 10 permit fees or beach park and permit fees have gone up extraordinarily over the past several years. So that's something we need to do is control taxes and enforce these fees. When you look at permits such as this, well, there is an application process, and if you think there's unsafe housing conditions for people living there, if you think there are too many children living in one area, you need to contact the school district, which will contact the town, and we need to beef up our public safety enforcement and code enforcement and give them more teeth to make sure that if we think there are illegal dwellings, if we think it's unsafe living conditions for the children or the families, or too many people in the house because of fire safety conditions, we need to be more proactive, because it doesn't have to do with not only the monetary thing, it has to do with the safety thing, and we want to make sure that people are living in the best environments possible. And we also want to hold landlords accountable if they have too many people living in one house. And it has to go back with making sure that we have the proper people in charge of public safety, that have law enforcement backgrounds, and can expand their services.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, we'll start with you on this. From the audience, in Fort Salonga, a developer has purchased the Indian Hills Country Club with the intention of building cluster townhomes on this property. As a neighbor of the country club, I'm extremely concerned about how the proposed development would affect the area and my home value. Please indicate if you would support or oppose this project and why.
So the Indian Hills is, it started out that they wanted to build around the golf course. And there were a lot of issues, especially with the steep slope and the environment. The concern and the challenge is that the application right now, coming forward, is not requesting a change of zone. The owner has that property, and they can, because they own the property, put in an application to put in housing. They can cluster it, which might be better for the steep slopes, and it might also be better for the environment, but they also can spread it out. So it's really working with the property owner's rights, and then what it is that if they are asking for any type of relief.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci.
One of the things that we need to do better is communicate with the civic associations in the neighborhoods before making a decision, before looking at a plan option. And I think that needs to continue, especially in these areas, whether it's Elwood Seasons or looking at Indian Hills. And having the open dialogue, making sure everyone's part of the process, looking at the development, looking at the impact on transportation area, and of course the environment is huge, because everyone needs to be part of the dialogue. So again, we do have property rights there of the owner, but making sure people have input in the process is very important.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini.
Well, I've already mentioned that I would be placing a moratorium on all development, primarily because this particular property sits so close to the shore. We really need to think about what the environmental impact of this will be. As most of Long Island is over the aquifer, I'd like to know how much this is going to impact our underground water and what the impact on the neighborhood this will be. I think beyond talking to the civic groups, we have to talk to our neighbors and find out what, how many units are coming in, and how is this going to affect our roads, and how many more people are going to come into the school district. And these are all questions that we really do need answers to, because right now we really are overcrowded.
Thank you. Continuing once more on that line of development, there are several questions from the audience, and the key words about development are about preventing overdevelopment, what's appropriate development, and out of control. So I'd like to start with Mr. Lupinacci, and let's talk about in the real world. There's always this balancing act between the community residents' needs and wants and commercial developer needs and wants. How would you reconcile that?
Well, again,
you always want to be open for business, and whether it's bringing jobs to the 110 corridor or down to Huntington Village, you want to make sure that the town of Huntington, specifically Town Hall, becomes a partner with the businesses and looking at what the needs are of the area. Now, in terms of development, well, we need to look at infrastructure always. We need to look at the increased amount of students in a school district, and we have to look at environmental impact. And those decisions need to be, analyzed when building any type of project. Now, if you have an area that has single-family homes, and that is the landscaped area, then high-density housing is not maybe going to be suitable, but you have to work along with the civic associations and bring people into the planning process. Because the worst thing you want is plans to come forward where no one had dialogue, where no one was able to analyze anything before things are built. And I think that's important. So looking at downtown areas along the 110 corridor where there's some more areas of ingress and transportation, and where you're closer to transportation are usually suited better than spot building in certain neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini?
I tend to agree with Mr. Lupinacci on this issue. Again, engaging the civic groups and talking to the neighbors and bringing them in to discuss the development. As I said before, we are getting to a point of being overcrowded all throughout the town. And how appropriate is high-density housing in an area, that's primarily single-family? Not to be redundant on Mr. Lupinacci's points, but I did mention already before, we have to consider our school districts, have to consider how many students will be coming in, and what that would do to the classrooms. So, that's my position. We believe we require a moratorium on all high-density housing development.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards?
So I disagree with both of them. We have to really talk openly about what high density means. And we have to talk openly about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing, both for families and for young people and for seniors. We have wonderful school districts. But what we're doing is we are educating our kids to then go live in North Carolina because they can't afford to come back and live here. So the way that we're going to be able to do that is we have to build some high-density housing because that is what's going to be important for the senior community, for young families, for first-time home buyers, and for our young people. I am passionate about the need for affordable housing. We have to ensure that we do it right. We have to do it smart. We have to make sure that we are caring for the environment. We do have a state environmental impact that we have to go through in any area. And we also need an architectural review.
Thank you. The next question starts with, yes, rebuttal, 30 seconds.
When we speak about affordability, we spoke about economic growth and job development, but also looking at affordability has to do with taxes. And that's why it's important that we can't pierce the tax cap, we can't raise taxes, because that has to do with affordability. And also, we have to march on to fight our LIPA case, because if you look how devastating that could be for the residents of East Northport School District, taxes could go sky high. They might have to cut curriculum, cut programs, of course it will affect taxes town-wide. So we obviously want to make it affordable, but also controlling costs is a huge thing too.
Thank you. Okay, the next question starts with Mr. Raspantini. The town of Huntington employs thousands of people. If elected to serve the town, would you support pay equity and the elimination of sex and race discrimination in the wage setting system with paid family leave and in health care?
Yes, I absolutely would support that. I think when it comes to staffing at Town Hall now, after going through the budget, I'd like to mention that I think we can certainly cut some staff out of the supervisor's office, for sure, that's operating at over $1.2 million a year. I think we can take a really close look at a lot of the different departments and see where we can trim the fat, essentially, and see how we can close that $2 million deficit that revolves every single year. I do understand also that the AAA bond rating is based on our ability to pay back from borrowing to cover that deficit, and that is very important to mention. Again, as I said before, I do agree, and I will support 100% those items that you had asked me about. But more specifically, I think this budget needs to be, seriously looked at, and every department needs to be audited. So that is my opinion there.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards?
So, I absolutely agree with pay equity. I absolutely agree with healthcare. Healthcare it's a tough issue, because I will tell you that we did pierce the cap. If you look at the 2% cap that is in place, which I am in favor of, but it's 2% for cost of living. And when we pierced the cap, it was a 0.68, it wasn't 2%. And we had an 8% rise in state empire of land in healthcare. And we do have to do a job of making sure that we are providing healthcare for all residents. We're down probably about 60 some odd people over time. So we have to, in my opinion, increase our staffing levels in some areas, and we can decrease in others. But from an overall perspective, we have to make sure that we're ensuring that our health care is more economic.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci?
In terms of pay equity, I've definitely supported. I did support it up at the state level. I know there was a smear piece against me saying that I was against the woman's equality agenda, but let me make it perfectly clear. Every piece of the woman's equality agenda that was signed into law by Governor Cuomo, I either voted for, or not only did I vote for, I sponsored, whether it had to do with equal pay for equal work, pregnancy discrimination, helping make sure there was less sexual harassment in the workplace. And that was something that I'll definitely bring to town hall, supporting women's rights. In terms of paid family leave, I definitely have supported versions of it at the state level, and I would definitely take a look at it for our workers here, because we could be a trailblazing town to offer it. And I think that's very important too. When we look at where we would get the money from, well, we need to look at, again, the supervisor appointed staff. We can make a lot of change in that area to save money, making sure that we review all the waste of the various departments. But even though the number of employees has decreased at the town level, the number of contracted services increased.
Thank you. The day before Election Day is actually, this is probably a test, but I'll tell you, is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage in New York State. What do you envision, if each of you, whoever wins, whoever becomes supervisor, what change might you see in your term for women in the town of Huntington? And that would start with Ms. Edwards.
Well, I'd be the supervisor. I will tell you that, with no disrespect to the gentlemen that are here, women do get things done. We get things done passionately, professionally. We really are very strong advocates for both women, families, men, and youth. And I think that I'm so excited to be your councilwoman, I will tell you. And I've worked very hard to do a lot of things for our youth and for housing and for employment. And I'm looking at this opportunity to do even more. This is not a free race for me. I had to make a decision, because if I do lose this race, which I don't plan to, but if I do lose this race, I'm out. But it's not about me, it's about you.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci?
I think it's very exciting. We've done a lot up in Albany to help plan the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, and it's something that we, put a lot of dedication into. And I think Huntington could, continue to be a trailblazing town in this area, and making sure that many of the top advisors and positions in the town go to women and people of various backgrounds. So I think that's very important, to make sure that we continue here to have a place where people can raise families, and we celebrate people of all different backgrounds and all different genders and such. And I think we could have a year-long celebrations too, honoring women's rights too.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini?
Well, each of us is here today because of a woman. And as town supervisor, I plan to make housing affordable for young families. And that's the most significant thing that we can do. And to get back to what I mentioned before about affordable housing being a women's rights issue, this is a fact, because women and men are having families later and later in life. And that means that a woman is at a health risk if she's having a child anywhere between the ages of 35 and older. As a matter of fact, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine mentioned that a woman is considered elderly if she has a baby at 35 years of age and older. So we need to get people into homes sooner. And that's a fact. We have to get families comfortable, settled, being able to afford their houses at an earlier age. And that's just, I know people are chuckling about this, but it's the first time you've ever heard it. It's a fact. Affordable housing is a women's rights issue. Women and men settle down and get into their houses earlier.
Thank you. Okay, we now have several questions which I'll combine into one that relate to campaign contributions. And this round will start with Mr. Lupinacci. The audience wants to know, how much have you spent campaigning? Who are your largest contributors? And should PACs and unions be permitted to make donations to campaigns? Mr. Lupinacci.
So, you can go online and look at the election website. You can see exactly where our filings are and what we pay for. So the first question was, how much have we raised?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, how much have you spent?
How much have I spent? Okay, so basically right now, I think at this period, it was probably close to about 70 or 80,000 on the last reporting cycle. The next report is due next week, so we itemized every contribution that comes in. The biggest donor was myself. I gave myself a loan of $50,000. I see money and such coming into the campaign, and obviously that goes to paying for commercials, mailers, anything to do with it, and everything's tracked online in terms of what we spend in every check that is written, and it's updated every few weeks depending on the cycle. Whether or not unions or PACs, sometimes third-party money comes in, and we try to pass legislation, including up in Albany, closing the LLC loophole and such, and anything that's not coordinated with the campaign, PACs or unions can spend. Anything that's coordinated with the campaign needs to make a direct contribution to us, and we have to account for where the money's going.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini?
Well, I've spent about $6,000, and that's how much we raised. We're running a lean, mean campaign, and most people that work for me are 100% volunteer. So do I believe that PACs should be able to continue to support political campaigns? I don't see how that's going to change anytime soon. I know that a lot of these, different things are well ingrained in politics in New York State. I would love to see some, some campaign finance reform, and as I'm sure many of you do as well. So in terms of who's my biggest donor, it's my corporation, and it's been quite an adventure. This is only my second debate ever, and it's very exciting for me. So I'm really happy to be here, and again, if you want to make a donation, my campaign manager will write that.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards.
So, I took a loan of $50,000 too. My biggest contributor has been our family. I really think that the way to do campaign finance reform, in my opinion, is to do it at the state level so that it applies to everybody. So that it applies to all parties. And it applies to every race. That is true campaign finance reform. So I don't believe that you can limit contributions to PACs and unions by not doing it to others as well. So the best way to do it is at the state level, in my opinion.
Yeah. Where? We only have one red page.
Oh, what? The whole time?
Yeah. The key to this is I've got to make notes, and as we wrap up, which we will do in 5 minutes for this round, please make your points in that. Let me try to get 1 or 2 more questions in, because we have 4 people on the town council campaign, and of course our 2 highway department candidates. And the library will start making announcements in an hour. They're going to want us out pretty quickly. Mr. Raspantini, I believe you are next. What is your plan for alleviating the MS-13 problem?
I'm really glad you're asking that question. As a matter of fact, the endorsement that I received from the New York City Department of Corrections by the New York City Department of Corrections Columbia Association, President Anthony Scoma is a very good personal friend of mine, and if elected, he will be coming on board to work with me. He is a Huntington resident, and he also specializes in setting up sting operations in 5 boroughs to eradicate gangs and gun trafficking as well as drug trafficking. He is the top cop, so he will be coming on board to work with us in the town of Huntington. That's my plan, to engage individuals like Anthony Scoma and people that he works with. So those are New York's finest.
Thank you.
So I think we have to take this in a couple of ways. The MS-13, we have to work diligently with our police department, both state and federal agencies, to do everything that we can to eliminate gangs. But we also have to do intervention and prevention so that we are stopping our children from going into gangs or being credited by gangs in the first place. That is critical. So it's not just one way that you have to do this. I also think that we can, I disagree that we could have a law enforcement as head of our public safety department, because I think that we need to allow the police department to do their job, and we need to work cooperatively in coordination with them to ensure that we are protecting all communities from gang violence, from drugs, and from any type of violence.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci?
When you look at the public safety office, it doesn't have to be obviously an active person. It could be someone who's retired and has experience in the field. So who better not than a retired person or someone that has the experience to coordinate with the federal government and of course with our state officials and of course with the county police, someone that has the background. That's going to be very important, is being the center of communication and working along with our neighborhoods to make sure if they see something, let us know or let the police department know so we can look at the different hot spots. But looking at code enforcement agents and making sure that we beef up that area is very important. And of course, making sure that we have great programs for our middle school students and our high school students. And something like the Conti Youth Center that's going to be built in the next few years could be a great opportunity to help expand those after-school programs and of course, allow for the transportation to them for them, because the more that they get involved in different programs in the middle school and high school, the better it is for them in terms of not getting into violent gangs afterwards. And we can help facilitate that with the school districts and continue to expand those programs. And we also have programs like the Tracey Way Out. In the last 5 years,
Thank you.
they've been helped steady in their budget.
Thank you. Ms. Edwards, we start with you. The town of Huntington, through its Open Space Committee, has preserved hundreds of acres of open space within the town. What role do you think the town of Huntington should fill and specific actions take to protect the environment?
So, we have to do many things in terms of open space. I think that we can proactively take a look at some places that we need to rezone so that we never build, because there are areas there that are impacting the environment that we can rezone it now to stop any type of building. I do also believe, though, that one of the challenges with the tax cap is that the open space referendum that the voters chose to put forth in order for us to purchase open space and also to make sure that we can improve our parks, that is really a problem because it impacts the tax cap. So one of the things that I want to do as your supervisor is then work with all of the legislators, including Mr. Lupinacci, to go to the governor to see if we can get some exclusions so that we can ensure that we have the money in place to buy open space and that we can protect it from further building.
Thank you. Mr. Lupinacci?
Well, preserving open space in our green areas and of course our parks will be a top priority. Putting along with that, making sure that our water quality stays pure and is a main, obviously, goal for our town. So we want to look at keeping our harbors safe and of course clean. We want to make sure that we deal with various water quality issues. We want to make sure that our wastewater treatment plant comes in line with being EPA and DEC compliant and not non-compliant. And of course, we want to educate people, but also expanding things like community gardens that we have down in Huntington Station and such, bringing those to other areas, because we could actually help facilitate a lot of green space by farming off the areas too and increasing our agricultural area. And making sure that people are well educated, whether it's nitrogen and fertilizers, and making sure that our people are educated in this area, giving incentives for rain gardens to help with water quality, and looking at expanding other natural ways to help purify our water like the shelter.
Thank you. Mr. Raspantini?
Sure. The question was, what can we do to preserve the open space? And the first thing that we can do is to place that moratorium on high-density development and stopping the building rampantly around Huntington on our open space. We also need to see whether or not the state and the federal government has environmental grants available for us to make sure we can preserve our water. That's our biggest issue when it comes to open space. We have but one aquifer in Long Island, and we have to make sure that it stays healthy. So the best thing we can do is, again, put that moratorium on, to take a pause on building, and be able to allocate funds to purchase and preserve property.
Thank you. At this point, we're asking each candidate to make their closing statement. It'll be 1 minute, and we'll start on this end with Mr. Raspantini. Yep, you start, and Mr. Lupinacci ends.
Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone for attending this evening. Thank the League of Women Voters again. Thank the Chamber of Commerce for coming. And I think you have an important decision this November 7th. And I think, you know, it's going to be very important because we've heard a lot of talk over the past few years, but now it's time for action. So we want to make Huntington open for business again, bring more jobs to the area. We need to control taxes and fees. We need to make sure that our quality of life is improved, and of course that we take care of our environment. And we want to make sure that our communities are safe and secure. And we want to tackle ethics reform, campaign finance reform, and pass term limits. And that's just what I'll do if elected your next town supervisor. I will work along with the civic associations. I'll work tirelessly on behalf of the community and know that I want to preserve the quality of life for our future generations. My grandparents came here in the 50s from Italy, and they were able to raise an excellent family. We want to make sure that future generations have the same opportunity. So I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and I look forward to any future questions that you might have or conversations.
If I am afforded this opportunity, I am going to continue the work that I started on your behalf 4 years ago. I am the person that I believe who has the experience, who has the knowledge, who has been there, but not long enough to the point where I know what to keep, what to tweak, and what to continue. This LIPA issue I just want to go back to, because it's not just enough to just fight in court. As the municipal leader, you have to partner. You have to partner with the school districts. You have to partner with our government officials. You have to work cooperatively with everyone in order to protect the taxpayer. I want to work on affordable housing. I'm proud to be an advocate for that Conti Center for these kids. I worked with many of you on programs. If I'm given this opportunity, I will be the best supervisor. No deference to Frank, but I will be the best supervisor you will ever have. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Civic participation is integral to the success of any community. My experience as an entrepreneur and business owner for the past 12 years right here in Huntington, contracting with Fortune 500 companies, small businesses, and town hall itself, gives me the unique perspective required to creatively problem solve the many challenges Huntington faces. One of my opponents is facing significant financial irregularities, as is the town of Huntington, while up in Albany, the other voted for differential pay based on sex and race. We must guard against those politics from coming down to Huntington. We must guard against status quo policy that taxes us through the roof. Taxes have gotten so high, Channel 12 reported that Tracey Edwards couldn't pay them these last 15 years. Ethics reform is required. Nepotism needs to stop, and term limits will come to pass on my watch. Now is the time for the independent people, like you and me, to step forward, take the reins of our government, and steer it in a direction that serves the people. I need your support and your vote on November 7th to save Huntington and to end corruption once and for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wish
We're moving on to town council.
Okay, folks, in order to get in as many questions as possible, please, if you want to have a conversation, leave the room. We want to get started again. We have 4 candidates here for the town council.
Okay, folks, we're about ready to do town council. We have 4 candidates. We will obviously cover many of the same topics, but you have a town government that has a supervisor and council seats. And both positions are very important. And I believe some of the people here have not been on the council before, some have. So I think it's important to listen to all of them. After we get to about half an hour, we'll close this part, and then we'll do the town highway department candidates, and we'll have about 20 minutes on yours. We have some questions already. So again, the rules are 1 minute opening statement for the town council, then we'll start rotating through. I will ask you all for your understanding. Ms. Rogan, you'll go first now. And normally what would happen is you would go first at the end, and then Mr. Smith would do the final, or is your understanding the other way around? Doesn't matter, all right? Okay. You know, east and west of the Huntington Smithtown line, it's like another world. Yeah, okay. All right, so we have 1 minute, Ms. Rogan, for your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Huntington Chamber for hosting this event and giving me an opportunity to tell all of you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for town board. I was born in Huntington Hospital, grew up in Huntington Station, and today I live right in the village, walking distance to downtown Huntington, with my husband and my 2 children. For the past almost 12 years, I have served on the school board of one of the 8 school districts in the town of Huntington. 4 of those years I served as the president, 2 of those years I was vice president. And in that time, I have worked collaboratively with my colleagues, with the community, with the administration, in a capacity that wholly qualifies me as a non-incumbent to step in on day 1 and do the job as your councilwoman. I have been serving as a public servant with passion, with respect, and with an open-mindedness that I will bring to the town board. I have no personal agenda. My goal in running is because I love this town, I care about this town, I want to be part of helping this town move into the future. Thank you.
Mr. Cuthbertson.
Good evening. My name is Mark Cuthbertson. I live a few miles from here. I have to tell you, looking out, I have never seen this bigger crowd of this thing. I am delighted that you are all here. I am running on my record in office, part of which are the town finances. We have a terrific record. We have a AAA bond rating, which is not just a credit rating. It's a report card on how we manage the town. So working with the supervisor over the last 10 years in difficult economic times, we have been able to maintain that bond rating. We've done that in part by economic development. We attracted Cannon to Melville, which was $1.4 billion worth of spending that has gone on, and hundreds of jobs that have been brought to the area, and more spin-off jobs, but also keeping our eye on environmental conservation. We've preserved over 300 acres of open space by leveraging the money in our Open Space Bond Act with the county. And let me just finish by thanking the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. I want to be clear, because I know the League has a position that they are supporting the Constitutional Convention. I do not support the Constitutional Convention, and I wouldn't want my participation here to be construed in a different way, so thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Leonick, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Huntington Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity. Each time that I've had an opportunity to come before voters, and in this room a number of times with the United Civics of Huntington, I've taken that opportunity. Groups like the Elwood Taxpayers Association have invited us in. I've taken that opportunity, welcomed an open format of questions. I'm happy to be here to answer any questions that anyone has, because it's important for you as voters to know what we think and what we believe in. There are many issues affecting us in the town. The 5 biggest ones are taxes, crime, drugs, water quality, and development issues. There's not nearly enough time in my opening to address all of those, but I will tell you that I believe in public service, I believe in open and transparent government, I believe in providing later hours for some of our town departments, and increase the amount of online documents and forms that you can file online to eliminate the visits to town hall. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Edmund Smyth. I'm a lifelong resident of the town of Huntington, as is my wife. We're raising 4 children, all in public schools. I got into this race because my office sits on Main Street in Huntington Village, and over the past few years, I've seen the traffic building and building and building. And recently, approximately 6 months ago, the final straw for me was when I read in the Long Islander that the current town board decided to sell off a piece of the parking lot behind the Elks Club. And after that, I started noticing a lot more. I was unhappy with the direction the town is taking. Quickly, I support term limits. I support focusing resources on town roads and infrastructure. I do not support a moratorium on development. Okay, however, I do have a high threshold for what is appropriate. I'll immediately put the town's checkbook online, as well as all contracts. As a practicing lawyer on Main Street, I have been making problems for people to go away for the last 20 years, and if elected, I will make problems go away if given time and resources to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. They'll start with Mr. Cuthbertson, and then go across there, and Ms. Rogan, you go forth in that cycle. You're elected. You're going to be serving with 3 other council members and a supervisor. Realistically, in your first 6 months, what are you going to put your energies into, and are you going to be able to achieve something?
Absolutely. I mean, I have the blessing of having been on this board for many years and achieving many things. And no matter how the board may shift, I look forward to working with new people. I think for me, the 2 big picture things that I want to pursue are things that I see out there when I'm going door to door. So the first thing I see when I go to door are Amazon boxes everywhere. And our mom and pop stores are battling Amazon. And we need to see how we support them, but also how, in the future of our town, real estate development changes and what we do with these retail strip centers and repurpose them. The second thing I see are people 60 to 80 years old who just are in houses that don't make sense for them. So when we talk about higher density housing, it certainly makes sense for seniors. We really need to encourage more senior living areas because we have housing stock that doesn't suit the needs of the people who live in it.
Thank you. Mr. Leonick? Now, folks, you're going to hold your applause till the end there, please.
Thank you. So in the first 6 months, I see the following things happening once I'm elected. If I have colleagues that will agree with me, I'd like to pass term limits. I strongly believe in term limits. I think that every office in the nation should have term limits, starting with the president on down. The president has them. Everyone should have them. I know that some of my colleagues disagree with that, but I believe that. I also would like to increase the level of public service, customer service from the town of Huntington. Walking around, speaking with residents, I hear many things from our residents about things that they're not happy with. They think that the town micromanages many of the things that go on in their lives, and I'd like to change that culture within the town, starting at the top from the town board level. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Well, I agree with Jim. The first thing we'd have to do is put the term limits in place. It's time for them. Secondly, checkbook online, and in particular all contracts online. I think the best source of whistleblowing is going to be the losing bidders on contracts, because they will know who the players are, and if those contracts, the winning bidders, are available online for review, it will shed a tremendous amount of light on the way the town does their contracting. One of the other things I would like to see is that the town board meetings get moved around the town to various, we could go to various high schools that are in areas where the town board agenda items are focused. If there's a particular hot button issue in a particular area of the town, I think it would be appropriate to move the town board meeting to that location so that more people that are directly affected by what's on the agenda could participate in the town board's meetings.
Thank you. Ms. Rogan?
So when I get elected, I'm going to do the job full time. I'm a freelance writer, and I've already told my clients that when I become councilwoman, my priority will be the job that I get elected to do by the people of Huntington. So in my first, and the first part of the question was about working with other people. As a person who's been on the school board for almost 12 years, the most senior trustee in our school district, I have had the privilege and the challenge of working with all different people, people with whom I agree, people with whom I disagree, and so working with my colleagues to reach consensus and to find ways to problem solve will be probably one of my top skills. In terms of what I'll do first off, I think any new person who's never been on a board before needs to get to know the job. You need to talk to people, the department heads. You need to go spend time with the people in town hall. Ask them about what they do. Ask them what works for them. Ask them how you can help as their council person to help them do their jobs better. So that would probably be my first thing.
Thank you. Mr. Leonick, we're going to start the next one with you. Is the town finances good shape, bad shape? If in good shape, what are you going to do for the community with all that money? And if not, how are you going to solve a problem?
I think that overall our town finances are in good shape. I think they could be better. I think that we can look harder at how we spend money and why we raise fees on certain things. I think that I've spoken to people like such as volunteer firefighters who were in jeopardy of losing their free beach passes. Little things like this may seem inconsequential, but they have a big impact on the community. If you're going to give volunteers a benefit, I don't believe in taking it away. I think that things like our parking at the beaches, you get a pass to go to the beach, you get it for one vehicle in your household. Look to put in some type of a pass so that everybody in the household gets to use a pass for the beach. As far as the big picture, we have a bond rating that allows us to borrow a lot of money. I'm not a big believer in borrowing. I'm a believer in paying off debt and trying to work within the income that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. I recently wrote a letter to the editor about the bond rating. The fact is, it is effectively a credit score in the municipality. I think the overall finances of the town are good. Okay. However, I think the the narrative that you're hearing about that bond rating is misleading, as I said. It is a credit score. It reflects how well or how likely it is that the town is going to repay its debt. That's it. Okay? And the fact that the town has shown a willingness to raise your taxes, and us as taxpayers have the ability to pay those raised taxes, we'll get a AAA bond rating every time. That's a fact. That's finance. As far as how the town is balancing that budget, one of the things it's doing is it's doing so on fees. I think we have to take a hard look at it, and all the fees that have been raised. More importantly, most of the budget is non-discretionary. However, if elected, I will make sure the taxpayers feel like they're getting their money's worth out of the high taxes that we're already paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rogan?
So it's a challenge with the tax levy cap. We needed it, and I think that it was a real reminder for all of us that, you know, we can't just go back to the taxpayers and ask for more money. And I know that firsthand because I do it every year in budgeting season in a school district. I think the town's finances are in good shape. I also recognize that we have mandated costs that in some cases are not in the purview of the local budget. And so where we do have the ability to recognize efficiencies, to find ways where we can increase income, maybe not by fees, but by some other partnerships, by looking for grant money, I think we need to be a little bit more creative in our budgeting process, because in this era, the tax cap, which is not going away, I think we need to be able to find that balance between where we cut and where we bring in more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cuthbertson?
Yeah, I'm proud of the town's finances and having been a part of a program with Supervisor Patron to try and pay down debt, but also maintain our credit rating, which allows us to borrow more cheaply and have capital improvements in town, infrastructure improvements. And I hear the dynamic on fees and taxes, but when we raise fees, we're trying to make it such that we're not going to raise taxes as much. So we're always trying to balance people who are using certain town services and the cost of them going up with the fact that we don't want to increase the tax burden on others. So that's a delicate dance that we continue to do. We really, in the past 10 years, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. Our tax levy has increased about an average of 1% over the last 10 years, and you're hard-pressed to find any other town that's been able to do it within those limits.
Okay, thank you. Next one starts with Mr. Smith. The governor has asked all towns in the state to make plans to consolidate services and share costs. Supervisor Malone supports this plan, and I should say County Executive Malone supports this plan. He's not there. And asks the towns and communities to make proposals. Do you support this effort and look forward to developing a proposal? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, absolutely. I think anytime there's an opportunity to consolidate services, I would think that it's something the town board should always look into. I think there's a couple of areas that we should look at, like the traffic signals department should be part of the highway department, and I think those two go hand in glove. But that's just one example. I think that anytime there's an opportunity to consolidate for cost savings to the taxpayers, I think it should be taken.
Thank you. Ms. Rogan?
I am also very much in favor of consolidating services wherever it's relevant, wherever it can be recognized, and wherever you can create partnerships. I think it's always a benefit to taxpayers and to community members. I would love to see us be able to partner with some of the surrounding towns and figure out ways that we can possibly improve some services while reducing the costs. We do it as school districts with the town and with other school districts, and I think that it's a really important thing, and I don't think it ever goes far enough. So I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to sit down and talk to my colleagues from surrounding towns and see how we can, pool our resources. Again, it's about being innovative. It's about being creative and thinking outside of the box and not just doing the same old every single time. So I absolutely would look forward to doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Mr. Cuthbertson.
I agree with the governor's initiative on shared services. I think he's speaking to not consolidating town departments, but sharing services among different levels of government, whether it's town and county. We did participate in County Executive Ballone's program and are working to develop a plan, but we do it currently. We have intermunicipal agreements with the Village of Lloyd Harbor when it comes to certain issues on the waterways. We work with the Elwood School District. We had an intermunicipal agreement as well on certain services. So we do it currently, but I think by the governor requiring that we all get a plan, that there's going to be more thought that goes into that process. So I welcome the opportunity to continue to do that because I think there are savings that can be made. We shouldn't kid ourselves either. This isn't, you know, the silver bullet. It's a start and a good one.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard?
I think that sharing services between municipalities obviously makes sense. I don't think there's anybody here that disagrees with it. How you do it, what impact it has, that we have to sort out. But we do things like share incinerator facilities and things like this with other municipalities, the town of Smithtown, and we realize efficiencies and savings by doing that. I think if we were talking about consolidation within the town, as Ms. Rogan mentioned, you have to be careful because that affects the number of town employees that we have. I think that over time, over a 20-year period of time, we're actually down probably 100 employees of what we were 20 years ago. And I think part of the reason for that is because we're outsourcing some of our services that probably cost us more money. So if we can work with other municipalities, for instance, on equipment. If you have a big piece of equipment that's only used periodically by the town, why should we own our own and use it a quarter of the year? Work with other municipalities that need it too and share it.
Okay, thank you. Next one starts with Ms. Rogan. So far this evening, in the last hour plus, we haven't heard too much about youth, very young people within the town. Can you speak to what you consider to be priorities in terms of town government, in terms of youth needs? You can touch on the opioid crisis, you can touch on the gangs in MS-13 or other issues.
My sweet spot. I have a personal passion. Obviously, I've been serving students for almost 12 years in one of the school districts in our town. And I have some great, what I think are great ideas of things I'd like to implement as a councilwoman because, you know, when we talk about kids joining gangs, when we talk about kids using drugs, when we talk about kids, you know, the depression rate among teenagers, when we talk about self-harm, one of the things we tend to do as adults is talk at kids and not ask of them what they need. And so one of the first things I'd like to do is convene a workshop or a council that involves the school districts, that involves community leaders, but it involves students, and get them together and get people having honest conversations about the ways that we can help them feel more connected, feel more engaged, and make better choices. It's not enough just to tell them not to do things. It's not enough just to say don't join gangs and don't do drugs. So that would be one thing.
Thank you. Mr. Cuthbertson.
Thank you. I've worked closely with our youth bureau. One of my first initiatives as a town councilman was to establish a youth court where kids could be diverted out of the court system and judged by a jury of their peers. And we're now going on 14 years now in a successful program where the young people become the litigants, the judge, the jury, and organize this and actually divert someone out of the criminal justice system, and it's been very successful. When it comes to youth, obviously one of the high priorities is opioids, and it is such a scourge in our community. And we have begun the dialogue with LICAN, and we are working with our school districts and talking to them. And I think that is part of what we need, a real community dialogue that engages our school districts, because they are on the forefront of this. They are the ones who deal directly with children, and all of the education has to flow through them. But I'm not sure that there's a lot of talk or an umbrella group that does that for them in our town, and I would like for us to serve that purpose.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leonard?
I'll start with just a quick story about how I ended up living in the town of Huntington. While I was in law school, I was involved in a fraternity, and we were asked to provide judges to a moot court program at Northport High School. So I started going to those programs, and I found it very interesting that the school district would provide that process and teach students in that way. So I got involved by doing that. Then we moved to the town. I've gotten very involved in the town and the community, involved in Boy Scouts and other organizations. I'm president of our school district foundation. Those things have taught me that we need to educate our youth about many issues, about drugs, about gangs, and we need to get to them as youngly as possible. So we need to get to them in the elementary school, and we need to provide programming to teach them about these things that become problems later on.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Well, this is also my sweet spot. I have 4 children, so it's close to home. I have 2 in high school right now, and I can tell you that listening to them speak, you know that the drugs are there, the alcohol is there, you hear about the depression. These are all real issues that's facing every kid in every school district sees it. So don't delude yourself in thinking it's in small pockets of Huntington. It's not. It's all over. I think primarily it begins at home. You have to, as parents, we have to stay very focused on our children and listen to them. As Emily said, don't talk at them. That's great advice. As far as what the town can do, I think bring programs into schools for addressing opioid issues and gang issues, that's great, but push it down into the elementary level. Middle school even, high school is too late. Middle school's it's getting there, but put it down into the elementary school level.
Thank you. The next one, I don't think they're going to say it's their sweet spot, but they're getting the question anyway. Mr. Cuthbertson, how do we get seniors to age in place in Huntington? Seniors to age in place in Huntington, to stay in the community, senior citizens?
Listen, I mentioned it before, I guess that was the comment, that we need to provide suitable housing for our seniors. We have seniors who it's very hard for them to stay in the conditions in which they're in. Anecdotally, I've seen this, right? You go to a 4-bedroom colonial and you have two senior citizens living there, and they paid off their mortgage, and it makes all the sense in the world, but we're not giving them enough options. They would love, when you talk to them at the front door, they're like, oh, the maintenance of this house, it's too much. So we've approved assisted living facilities. We just approved one in West Hills. And we've also approved senior restricted housing. So the Greens at Half Hollow was a massive one that was approved years ago. The Seasons at Elwood. So there has been an effort to do so, but it's not nearly enough.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard?
Thank you. I think we need to have an approach that addresses a number of different issues. Assisted living is nice, but most people choose to live independently and not be in an assisted living if they can stay in their home longer. I think that besides offering other housing choices by working with developers to bring in residences that are affordable, not residences that are $700,000 and $800,000 that cost just as much as the house that people are selling to move out of. I also think we need to hold the line on taxes and provide tax breaks and incentives for seniors so that they can stay in their house. And I think that we need to ease restrictions on accessory apartment units and the costs associated with that, because some seniors would opt to have an apartment in the house and rent part of it to help subsidize their tax bill. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you, Jim. You've just said what I was going to say in most parts. But one of the things that I wanted to stress was streamlining the accessory apartment for seniors and for people who are living in the house, not as absentee landlords, but I've heard multiple complaints about the fees associated with that and the headaches that people go through to do that. And for people that want to stay in their house, that is a very good option for them if they are able to put an accessory apartment into one of these very large homes to help defray the cost of staying in the house. But other than that, I'd just be repeating what Jim said.
Ms. Rogan.
So it's a little bit my sweet spot because my mom, who is sitting here in the audience, is very much a senior citizen, and we have been dealing with this issue very much. She went from a small house in Huntington Station to a much bigger house in Diggs Hills and is now in a, I don't even know what it is, but it's like a 3-level condo, and I worry all the time about what's going to happen when the stairs become a problem and where's she going to go. I'm also learning, and I'm doing my homework, and this is one thing that I think is really, really important about me as a person and as a candidate, is that when I'm not an expert on something, I do the research and I find out what I need to know. And so I'm just learning that there's different kinds of senior communities. There's over 55, there's over 62, there's assisted living, there's nursing homes. So I think we need to make sure that there are options for all of these situations, for folks to remain in their homes, for folks to find alternative housing that's reasonable, that they can live close to their families. And we also have to connect our seniors with other people so they don't feel isolated and so that they don't feel alone wherever they are. And that's very important.
Thank you. Okay, one more question and then we'll go to the closing statements so these patient gentlemen can have their say as well. This one is Mr. Leonick. 3 words: congestion, development, open space. If you're on the council, how are you going to balance this?
So when it comes to congestion, I think that it's directly impacted by the amount of development that's gone on in the town. I think that we need to put the brakes on. I wouldn't call for a moratorium, but I think we need to put the brakes on development in the town when it comes to large projects. There are probably 24 projects that are already green-lighted and approved. Those haven't even hit the street yet. They're going to increase congestion, traffic. I think we need to slow down development. And the last issue, I'm sorry, open space. So, look, open space has come to different forms. Golf courses might be considered by some to be open space, but they really aren't developed because they are putting nitrogen into the ground and they aren't developed. I think we need to preserve open space. I think we need to prevent taking parkland and turning it into developments and keep the suburban open space and open quality of our neighborhoods that we have.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would do on the congestion issue is I would get a summit, if you will, between the state road, the state commissioners and the county and the town. It appears to me, and I've heard this from several people, that there's very little communication between the town highway folks, county, and the state. And you'll see that anytime you go to an intersection between a county road and a town road, such as the intersection of 25 Bank Park Avenue in the morning, you'll see a terrible amount of congestion there. As far as development, I've already stated I'm not in favor of a moratorium. However, I do have a pretty high threshold on what I would think is appropriate development at the time being. And then lastly, as far as open space, I'm in favor of it in almost all forms, specifically golf courses. But one of the things that got me into this race was it just caught my attention that again in part of the transaction, selling off the piece of parking lot behind the Elks Club, there was a piece of vacant land right next to it that was sold as well to a developer to put up an apartment building.
Thank you. Ms. Rogan?
So since May, I've spent a lot of time on foot, knocking on doors and talking to folks and finding out what matters to them and what they care about. And in that experience, walking all over the different parts of Huntington, we have a ton of great parks and great open space already, and beautiful beaches. I'm a runner, I love to run all over the Huntington, and we have some amazing places. So I think it's really, it's vital that we, regardless of what we do elsewhere, that we always keep those parks and those beaches pristine, because those are the reasons people live here. As far as congestion goes, I'm not really sure what that means. I don't know if you mean there's a lot of people or if we're talking about cars, but I do think there are things we can do in terms of traffic lights, traffic controls, in terms of adjusting how we do parking. For example, in the village, I know a big issue is that people sometimes don't find parking on streets. Well, what about 15-minute spots in front of some of the most busy places so that people can run in and run out? I think these are things that we can solve, but you have to work together and be a problem solver with other people. Thank you.
Mr. Cuthbertson?
I'll speak first to development. Obviously, we need sustainable development that makes sense for our town. We're 96% developed, so there's only so much development that can go on in the town of Huntington. And I think as we look to the future, we have to put the building blocks in place such that seniors have the right type of housing units and younger people have the right type of housing units. The fact of the matter is that younger people now don't want to own a car, much less a house. So we have all of these suburban cul-de-sac homes that we're looking to fill up, and we have a generation that's not looking to live in them. So we have to have development that makes sense with the future. Open space, we need to continue our program. I agree with Tracey, we need to look at the tax cap. That's going to be a tremendous impediment to allowing future open space bond acts to occur. So it's always balance, you know, and I think we've tried to strike that balance over the last years in town hall.
Thank you. At this point, we're going to do the closing statements, so we'll start with Ms. Rogan and work our way down, 1 minute each.
Okay, I'll start. So, I think if you lined this all up and as you have and asked us issues, we would likely agree on the vast majority, 95% or better of the issues the town Huntington is facing right now. And the question I think everybody has or should be asking themselves is who do they have confidence in to get the job done? I think I'm that person. I'm a former staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. I'm a 20-year practicing attorney on Main Street. I'm a father of 4. I'm an obedient husband with a honey-do list. I get the job done. So I think if given the opportunity to serve the town board, and as I've said before, if given the time and the resources, I'll get the job done. Thank you.
So I want to thank you all for being here. We have a tremendous crowd. Thank you for so many of you showing up. I didn't say a whole lot about my background and my past experience that bears on how I would bring experience and knowledge to a town board position. I do have palm cards that I left out on the table. I have a website, I have a Facebook page, those are on there. I also answered questions that were posed to us by the League of Women Voters, and it will be posted at some point on their website that deal with other issues like sewers and housing and other things. So you can look on there, look on the website, you can find out more about me and what I'm about. I think that all of the different things in my background bear well for someone that will sit on the town board that has to make a lot of decisions that affect a lot of people from different backgrounds, and they deal with a lot of different subject matters. I've done a lot of different things in my life. I'm 55 years old. I'm not a newcomer to the world, and I have a lot that I can offer. I think the most important thing that you can do is to do partly what you're doing tonight. Be an educated voter, and please get your friends out to vote because only 1 out of 5 people will vote in this election. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for being here. I would describe myself, unfortunately, as an absentee husband and absentee father because over these last many years I've spent a lot of time out in the community with you, working on various initiatives. But I'm proud of the work that I've done, and I'm also proud of the fact that I'm willing to make the tough decisions. There have been decisions that I have made in office, whether it was approving Avalon or the Paramount or Canon, that were unpopular at the time, but I thought were right for the community. And that's part of what I want to continue, is if you want to please everyone in this job every day, you're not going to do a good job. So I try and balance the need to listen to the community, but to do what's right overall. And I am so proud to be running with Emily Rogan and Tracey Edwards and Kevin Orelli. We are a ticket that looks like this town, and I am proud of the ticket we have together and the plans that we have for your future.
So I also want to say thank you. We have an opportunity to put people on the board who are going to serve you and to work as a public servant. And I've already been doing it for almost 12 years. I have been serving in an unpaid elected position. I've been re-elected 4 times to that job. People have already put their trust in me. They know what they get from me. They know that I'm going to always be honest. then I'm not going to pretend to know something that I don't, that I'll find out what I need to find out to give you the answers, to work collaboratively, to work tirelessly on behalf of the people that I serve. You have my word that that is who I will be as your next councilwoman, and it would be my honor and my privilege to serve you all. So I hope you'll give me your vote on November 7th. Thank you very much.
Starting with Mr. Orelli and opening statement, please. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Orelli. People ask me, why do you want this job? I've been in my own business for 35 years, and people say, are you crazy taking on this job? And you know, I was not sure myself why I was doing it, but once I actually screened, I'm a member of the Democratic Committee, and I screened for the job, and once I started screening, I realized that I was the right guy for the job. I've been doing the work that the Highway Department does my entire life. I started plowing snow as a teenager for the town. You know, this is what I do for a living. So I'm a professional. I'm not just a backhoe operator, a payloader operator, but I'm also a construction surveyor. I'm an estimator. I'm a project manager. I am actually the whole package, and I am the right guy for this job, for this town. And I have to tell you, I was born in Huntington, my father was born in Huntington, my children were born in Huntington, and my grandchildren were born in Huntington. I love this town. That's why I'm running. Thank you.
Okay, I'm John Clark. I also was born in Huntington Hospital. I was with my 3 children. I've been here for 61 years. I worked in New York City for one of the largest privately held asset management companies in the country. In that role, I served as managing director, chief administrative officer, and a director of project management. I've had experience running a big company, and make no mistake about it, the highway department is a big company. I've run budgets exceeding $65 million. I've had more than 600 people reporting to me in that role. And after I retired from New York City, I spent 9 months as Deputy Superintendent of Highways. This election is about hiring a CEO for the Highway Department, which in effect is a company with a $40 million budget. It's about hiring a CEO for a company that is going to manage 150 plus people. And when we hire this CEO, we have to have experience in somebody who has run a large customer service shop, because we have 200 residents that we need to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. The first question will start with Mr. Clark. Storms of increasing frequency and severity threaten Long Island, with the potential of causing lengthy power outages and road damages. What plans would you propose to meet these increasing threats before and after they occur?
Well, there's a couple things we have to do. Number one, with the stormwater runoff, we have about 22,000 catch basins on our roads. Our maintenance program right now allows us to clean out about 3,000 of them a year. We then hire outside contractors that do another 1,500. So we maintain about 4,500 of the 22,000 catch basins we have on an annual basis. That's not enough to maintain and get the water runoff to where it should be. With regard to the storms, we also have about 200,000 trees that are in our right-of-way, and those storms wreak havoc on those trees. They knock them down and they block the roads, and we have to have a group that's out there clearing those roads in a very expeditious manner. I would allocate more resources to our tree team and more improved drainage in the town.
Thank you. Mr. Orelli?
Could you just repeat the question?
Storms of increasing frequency and severity threaten Long Island with the potential of causing lengthy power outages and road damage. What plans would you propose to meet these threats before and after they occur?
Right, the first thing that I would do, before I took office, once elected, I would try to meet with PSENG and try to do a much better job of coordinating their part in removing wires and making sure that the downed wires that are tangled in trees after a major storm can be affected in a much quicker way. When we had Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy, the biggest problem we had were trees down in the road and crews that were stuck looking at them, and they could not remove the trees because they were not allowed to, because they were tangled in wires, and there was no one there from PSENG, or maybe it was LIPA at the time, to actually let them know that it was safe for them to do that. So that's really the most important thing we can do. As far as allocating resources, we have a limited budget, so we actually have to make do pretty much with what we have. So there really aren't additional resources, but what we can do is partner with LIPA, PSENG, excuse me, and the other utility companies to make that more effective. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a lot of questions this evening about congestion, particularly in downtown Huntington with new apartments and commercial space. What can and should be done within the highway department's power circle to do something about this congestion? Mr. Orelli.
I don't think there's anything that the highway department can do to alleviate congestion. It's really not a part of the function of the highway department to build new roads or plan new roads. It's really more of the planning department, more the town board that would be involved in that. The only thing we could really help with is during snowstorms, removing snow from the villages and business districts, and trying to keep the roads safe and make sure there are places for people to park. But as far as alleviating congestion, it's really not the highway department's function to do that.
Yeah, I would have to second that. It's generally that type of jurisdiction falls under traffic and safety and engineering to plan the traffic and how we might mitigate the congestion that happens in the town. The only other thing that could be done is some type of modifications to the parking regulations that exist so we can have more throughput of our traffic in the downtown area.
Okay, thank you. We have a number of questions from individuals about their own roads or roads they frequently travel, and we can't get to them all, but there are a few that came in about Little Neck Road and Centerport in general in terms of adequate storm drainage, runoff, and also broken down roads, and one seems to cause the other. So, Mr. Clark, could you give us an answer that would then potentially be applicable to people who have similar issues in other parts of town?
Sure. First thing you have to look at is funding allocation. The budget is about $40 million for operating expenses and capital expenditures. Within the capital expenditures, we've allocated about $600,000 to improve the drainage. We have so many areas. We've had more torrential storms that happen these days, and the water runoff is just massive in a short period of time. So some of these storm drains just can't handle the amount of rain that we get. We also need to do a better job of putting in types of drainage like storm scepters or vortex-type drainage systems that will take the debris away and then actually filter the water out in a more manageable way.
Mr. Orelli, same question?
Yes, I agree with a lot of what John said, but we can also, as far as Centerport goes, Center Shore Road, did you say? I think it was Center Shore Road. Well, Center Shore Road, Little Neck Road? Okay. Well, all those areas are hilly terrains, and they all feed down in towards the area. So if we could find some spots where we could partner with some maybe private owners and put in some rain gardens, and also add additional catch basins upstream from where the water is coming down, that would be a big way of alleviating some of the problems there. As far as the roadways themselves, I know they're concrete roadways, And I would love to see some concrete repair to concrete roadways rather than just paving over them, if that would be possible.
Okay, another question, Mr. Orelli. First, do you really think that the highway department in your term, if elected, is going to be able to stay within budget, or do you think there'll be more and more pressure to do more with less?
Well, we don't really have a choice of whether we can stay in budget or not. We're given a budget to work with. But, you know, our first year in office, our budget's already set. Actually, I would love to see more money in the budget. I'm sure every person who runs any department in the town of Huntington would like to see more money in their budget. That, you know, John said we have a $40 million capital and working budget. I think it's closer to $30 million last I looked, but it doesn't really matter. We could spend $80 million a year if we had to spend. There's so many things that need to be repaired within the town of Huntington. Just broken curbs and sidewalks and trees and drainage. You know, $500,000 to spend on drainage is not a lot of money. So we can't really do a lot with what we are getting right now. So yeah, can we do what we have to do? We don't have a choice, but we would love, John and I would both like to see more money for paving projects, drainage projects. That's a given, but anyway.
No question, it is 40 million when you look at the CHIPS money that comes in, money that comes in from the state, and also the capital expenditure budget. We get about $2.2 million in capital expenditure money. And we're up against something this year, because I looked at the CHIPS money, we're down $700,000 in the money New York State allocated us in 2018 versus 2017. The other thing is there's something called an unassigned fund balance. That was recently reduced from $2.26 million in 2016 down to $1.048 million at the end of 2017. That's a 46% decrease. So we really lost about $1.8 million in funding that the highway department had in 2017 based on those reductions, and it's going to be a lot more difficult. My job with my fiscal background is to get more money allocated to where it needs to be allocated to improve the infrastructure.
Okay, one more question, Mr. Clark first and then Mr. Orelli. People are always going to want to contact the highway department. They've got pressing issues, emergencies, and long-term grievances. How are you going to make it easier for people to communicate and get answers?
I'll make it a quick answer, but a good one. I was responsible for running what's called the CRM system, Client Relationship Management System. These systems work in many different ways. One, they take telephone calls from residents. Two, they take face-to-face visits from residents. And three, they allow the residents to go on the town website. Those particular requests are prioritized, they're dated, and we geographically look at those type of requests so that we can go in and work in one particular area rather than running around half of the town. It also takes a look at those type of requests and categorizes them by type. Trees, sidewalks, potholes, that type of thing. And it's interesting to know, trees make up about 63% of our outstanding requests that we have from customers today, from our residents today. So CRM systems, technology, that's how you attack customer service.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Orelli?
Well, I think I'll answer all the calls I can myself and be as responsive as I can myself. People, you know, I've been walking, knocking on doors, and when someone tells me they have a problem, I say, look, you call me once I get elected, I will come look at your problem myself, and I will do what I can to get it repaired. I won't promise them that I can do that, but I will do my best to at least respond to people personally. But on top of that, there is a system in place right now at Town Hall where the calls are routed very efficiently to the foreman in the different areas. So if a call comes into a particular part of the town, it's routed directly to the foreman ultimately in that neighborhood, and he's there to respond to it. So the response time should actually be pretty good right now.
Okay, thank you.
Are we allowed to use those cards? Just for additional?
No, you get to close, so you can make your
Just get to make the close.
Yeah. Colette, could you give them each just over a minute, about a minute 15, just to complete your thought? the same then afterwards for Mr. Orelli.
Okay, well, listen, the magnitude of the highway department is great. 840 miles of roadway out there, and we actually reconstruct about 22 miles a year. If you do the math, it takes about 40 years or 38 years to do all the roads properly by reconstructing. That's not good enough. We also have about 22,000 storm drains. We need to improve our drainage. There are more than 50,000 signs in the town of Huntington, road signs. The state and federal governments have put reflectivity standards on the towns. We now have to replace 2/3 of our signs at a pretty big cost over the next 5 years. So what I think really separates me too, as well as my opponent, I was responsible for the Office of Emergency Management. I was responsible for disaster recovery and business continuity planning, and when 9/11 happened in New York City, I was the key person in my company that had to restore our company to operate within 5 days. I've worked with federal, local, and state agencies and authorities in times of these disasters, and if you look what's happened in Houston and Florida with these hurricanes, you need somebody that's had experience dealing in these situations to make sure we restore our operations as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's a great crowd that we have here tonight. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the Chamber of Commerce, Bob Von Tempe. It's great to see everyone here. I just want to say that, you know, I think I'm the best person for this job because not only do I actually have the experience to do the work that the Highway Department does, but I have the temperament. I have the I'm calm under pressure. I treat people with respect. And I know that everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. So I try to let people slide a little on their weaknesses and focus on their strengths. I'm proud of all the work I've done throughout my life, and I believe that most people want to take pride in their work. And I believe that as Superintendent of Highways, it will be my job to provide those people something that they can do, that they can be proud of at the end of the day. No one wants to work all day and do something that they can't come home and say at the end of the day they did something that they were not proud of. Everyone wants to do something and feel good about themselves. So I think that's very important. And so I'm asking you to give me the opportunity to do something I can be proud of, putting my knowledge, experience, and skills to work for the people of Huntington. Thank you.